Modern infidelity in women does not look the way most men were taught to expect. In the past, cheating left behind noise. There were careless text messages, unexplained phone calls, emotional inconsistencies, or stories that didn't quite line up. Today, many women who cheat do so with a level of control that makes detection far more difficult. They come home on time, they laugh, they eat dinner with you, they initiate affection, they maintain routines. On the surface, nothing appears broken, and that is exactly why so many men feel confused rather than suspicious. The danger is not that infidelity has become more common, but that it has become more concealed. Some women are capable of running two emotional or sexual realities at the same time without visible friction. One life exists with you, built on stability, familiarity, and comfort. Another life exists elsewhere, built on excitement, validation, secrecy, or advantage. These two worlds do not collide because she has learned how to compartmentalize them. As a result, men who rely on obvious red flags often feel as if they are losing their mind when something feels off, but nothing concrete can be proven. Most men are trained to look for big evidence, a name on the phone, a message they weren't supposed to see, a dramatic shift in behavior. But modern infidelity rarely offers that satisfaction. Instead, it operates through patterns, small, repeated behaviors that seem insignificant in isolation but form a consistent system over time. The problem is that men are taught to dismiss patterns as overthinking, paranoia, or insecurity. They wait for certainty while ignoring the structure unfolding in front of them. This is where many men lose their power. They stay stuck in investigation mode, hunting for proof. Instead of stepping back and reading behavior, they interrogate conversations instead of observing emotional rhythms. They demand explanations instead of noticing systems. And while they search for a single undeniable mistake, the underlying pattern continues uninterrupted. Infidelity at this level is rarely an accident or a one-time lapse in judgment. It is not about a bad week, a fight, or a moment of weakness. It is usually driven by an internal system that makes cheating repeatable, rationalized, and emotionally manageable for her. Without understanding the system, men personalize what is happening. They assume they are not enough. They try harder. They explain more. They lower standards. In doing so, they unknowingly make themselves easier to deceive. The purpose of this content is not to turn men into paranoid detectives or bitter cynics. It is to shift the lens, to move from chasing clues to understanding patterns, from emotional reaction to calm observation, from self-doubt to self-respect. When a man understands how certain women operate, he no longer needs proof to protect his dignity. He can read behavior clearly and act accordingly. In the next part, we will begin breaking down the first and most common pattern behind repeat infidelity manipulation through guilt and emotional confusion, and how it quietly dismantles a man's instincts before he ever realizes what is happening. One of the clearest patterns in women who cheat repeatedly is not just dishonesty, but manipulation at a psychological level. These women do not simply lie about actions. They construct an entire emotional reality around the lie, one that forces you to doubt your own perceptions. Over time, this becomes far more damaging than the infidelity itself because it trains you to distrust your instincts and defer to her version of events. When you ask a simple, calm question, the conversation rarely stays on the topic. Instead, it quickly shifts toward your tone, your timing, or your supposed insecurity. A neutral observation becomes an accusation in her narrative. A reasonable concern becomes proof that you have trust issues. Before you realize it, you are no longer observing her behavior. You are defending your character. This reversal is not accidental. It is strategic. Women who operate this way are highly skilled at emotional timing. They know when to appear wounded, when to be sweet, and when to withdraw. Their denial is smooth, controlled, and minimal. The story is always simple. never overloaded with details that could later contradict each other. If pressure increases, she may act hurt and offended, as if your doubt itself is a betrayal. This creates emotional friction for you, making every question feel costly. At the same time, she uses what can be described as guilt swings. One day, she is warm, attentive, affectionate, and present. She laughs easily, touches you more, and seems emotionally connected. The next day, she becomes distant, irritated, or cold without explanation. This inconsistency keeps you psychologically off balance. You begin chasing the good version of her, hoping that if you behave correctly, she will return to that state permanently. The purpose of these swings is control. When you are confused, you become compliant. When you are afraid of losing her, you stop pressing for clarity. You begin to accept emotional scraps in exchange for peace. Slowly, your standards erode. You no longer lead with calm authority or self-respect. You lead with fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of being alone, fear of pushing her away. Every sign that once felt meaningful gets reframed. Her phone habits change, and you are told you are imagining things. Time gaps appear, and you are accused of being controlling. Missing details are dismissed as your anxiety. Over time, you internalize the message that your intuition is a flaw rather than a warning system. This is how manipulation neutralizes a man's ability to protect himself. The most dangerous part is that these women often give just enough affection to keep you invested. A kind word, a loving gesture, a sudden burst of closeness, not enough to restore trust, but enough to reset your hope. And hope, when weaponized, becomes a leash. In the next part, we will explore another pattern that has nothing to do with you at all, women for whom cheating is not a reaction to circumstances, but a reflection of their nature, their appetite for stimulation, and their inability to live peacefully within stability. Another pattern that men struggle to accept is that some women do not cheat because something went wrong in the relationship, but because cheating aligns with who they already are. For these women, infidelity is not an emotional accident or a response to conflict. It is a continuation of a lifestyle that existed long before you entered the picture. The relationship does not create the behavior, it merely reveals it. These women are often highly stimulated by novelty. They are accustomed to attention from multiple men, to secrecy, to flirting without boundaries, and to the emotional charge that comes from being desired. Sexuality, for them, is not deeply bonded to loyalty or exclusivity. It is tied to excitement, validation, and feeling alive. While they may genuinely enjoy the stability you provide, that stability does not replace their appetite for stimulation. It only runs parallel to it. At first, many of these women appear deeply attracted, affectionate, and engaging. The early phase feels intense because novelty is present. But as the relationship settles into calm, predictability, and emotional safety, they begin to feel restless. Peace forces them to sit with themselves, and that silence becomes uncomfortable. Instead of self-reflection, they seek external disruption. They label stability as boredom and use that label to justify distance, drama, or temptation. This is where many men make a critical mistake. They assume they need to become more exciting, more impressive, more perfect. They compete with ghosts, with imagined rivals, or with her past. They forgive too easily, believing patience will inspire change. In reality, they are teaching her that there is no cost for crossing boundaries. Effort becomes expected. Sacrifice becomes invisible. Tolerance becomes permission. No amount of love, consistency, or performance can override someone's core identity. You cannot love discipline into someone who resists structure. You cannot create loyalty in someone who associates desire with chaos. When a woman fundamentally respects excitement more than stability, your commitment becomes a resource, not a bond. The correct question is not how to keep her interested, but what kind of woman you are building with. Does she respect calm, structure, and peace, Or does she only feel alive in stimulation and disorder? One builds a life, the other consumes experiences. Understanding this distinction is crucial, because otherwise men exhaust themselves trying to fix something that was never broken by them. They internalize responsibility for behavior that would have occurred regardless of their actions. In the next part, we will examine another deeply common pattern: women who view relationships through a purely practical lens, where loyalty is conditional, and men are evaluated not as partners, but as upgrades in an ongoing calculation. Another pattern that often hides beneath repeated infidelity is extreme practicality. These women do not primarily experience relationships as emotional bonds. They experience them as arrangements. Stability, resources, comfort, and lifestyle improvements are the real currency. And affection becomes a tool that supports access to those benefits. In this mindset, a man is not a partner to build with, but a package of value to be evaluated and, if necessary, replaced. With women like this, nothing you provide ever truly satisfies. When you give more, expectations quietly rise. When you sacrifice, it becomes normal. Your effort is absorbed without appreciation because it is seen as part of the deal rather than a gift. Over time, the relationship feels increasingly one-sided. But the imbalance is difficult to name because she rarely asks outright. She simply expects. Comparison is constant. She measures you against other men, against lifestyles she sees online, against fantasies shaped by social media and status culture. These comparisons may be subtle at first, framed as jokes or casual comments, but internally, she is always assessing whether something better exists. When another man appears who offers more money, more status, or a more exciting lifestyle, her behavior shifts rapidly. The warmth fades, the respect thins, distance appears without explanation. Infidelity, in this context, is not experienced as betrayal. It is experienced as strategy. She can remain calm because, in her mind, she is making a rational move toward advantage. Emotionally, she may still smile at you, touch you, and maintain routine. Because guilt is minimal when loyalty was never the foundation. You are part of her present arrangement, not her future identity. Many men respond to this pattern by trying to buy peace. They spend more, give more, compromise more, hoping generosity will inspire loyalty. Instead, it confirms a dangerous lesson that respect can be rented, but respect does not work that way. The more a man pays to keep a woman, the less she values him. Provision without standards turns into entitlement. A woman who views relationships transactionally will never be loyal out of love. She will be loyal only while the deal feels optimal. The moment a better option appears, loyalty becomes negotiable. This is not a moral failure in the short term. It is a structural one. The critical insight for men is that no amount of financial effort can secure commitment from someone who measures men as upgrades. Loyalty lives where respect lives, not where convenience resides. In the next part, we will explore a closely related but distinct pattern: women who are addicted not to resources, but to attention itself, and why validation becomes more powerful than love in shaping their choices. Another common pattern behind repeated infidelity is an addiction to validation. These women are not simply appreciative of attention, they require it in order to feel real. Without constant external affirmation, their sense of self begins to collapse. Compliments, desire, pursuit, and being chosen over and over again are not luxuries for them. They are emotional necessities. In relationships, this pattern creates a quiet contradiction. When they are with you, your love is steady, familiar, and predictable. Over time, it loses its emotional impact. It becomes background noise, but attention from outside sources feels sharp, new, and intoxicating. A message from another man, a lingering look, a reaction online instantly shifts their energy. You may notice it without fully understanding it. She seems flat and disengaged with you. yet animated and alive when external attention enters the picture. To keep this supply flowing, she maintains options, male friends who clearly want more, exes who are never fully cut off, social media behavior designed to invite engagement rather than express authenticity. She may insist that none of it means anything, and technically, in her mind, it doesn't. Because the attention itself is the reward, not the person giving it. This is why love alone cannot compete. You are not fighting another man. You are competing with volume, with novelty, with endless digital validation that arrives without responsibility or accountability. And unlike temptation, validation addiction does not feel wrong to the person experiencing it. It feels necessary. Like breathing, many men respond by trying to love harder, more affection, more reassurance, more presence. But this only accelerates the problem. The more available and predictable you become, the less stimulating your attention feels. You fade into certainty, while uncertainty elsewhere becomes exciting. The correct focus is not how intensely she claims to love you, but how disciplined she is with attention. Does she set boundaries willingly? Does she remove herself from environments that constantly feed her ego? Does she value peace over praise? A woman who cannot regulate validation will always be vulnerable to infidelity, because her sense of worth depends on being wanted by many, not chosen by one. You cannot rescue someone from emptiness by offering devotion. You can only observe whether they respect the structure that makes devotion possible. And when validation matters more than integrity, cheating becomes not a question of if, but when. In the next part, we will confront the hardest truth of all, the one many men avoid the longest. The possibility that repeated infidelity is not confusion, trauma, or weakness, but a simple absence of real love and respect. At some point, the most difficult truth must be faced. When a woman cheats repeatedly, lies consistently, protects her lies, and watches you struggle without genuine remorse, the issue is no longer complexity. It is not miscommunication, trauma, or confusion. It is the absence of real love and, more importantly, the absence of respect. Real love carries restraint. It protects rather than exploits. It considers the emotional cost of actions, even when temptation is present. A woman who truly loves you does not place you in a position where you must beg for honesty, search for clarity, or piece together reality on your own. She does not weaponize your loyalty against you. She does not treat your pain as an inconvenience to manage while continuing behavior that causes it. Many men get trapped by words. I love you becomes a powerful anesthetic. But love spoken without aligned behavior is not love as a bond. It is love as a transaction. She may love what you provide, the safety, the consistency, the status, the emotional labor, the structure you bring into her life. But loving what you offer is not the same as loving who you are, and only the latter produces loyalty. This is where many men confuse endurance with devotion. They believe that staying despite disrespect proves depth of feeling. In reality, it often proves fear, fear of starting over, fear of loneliness, fear that leaving means failure. Over time, that fear slowly replaces self-respect. The man adapts to discomfort, normalizes anxiety, and lowers his expectations, calling it commitment. The correct question is not whether she claims to love you. The correct question is whether she respects you. Respect is where boundaries are honored. Respect is where honesty exists, even when it is uncomfortable. Respect is where loyalty lives. Without respect, love becomes hollow, performative, and conditional. Another common mistake men make is searching for closure from the very person who benefits from their confusion. They want explanations, admissions, or emotional clarity. But someone who profits from ambiguity has no incentive to give you truth. Closure does not come from her understanding your pain. It comes from you understanding the pattern. When a woman truly values a man, she does not repeatedly place him in a position of doubt and self-abandonment. If she does, and nothing changes, the message is already clear. Continuing to negotiate with that reality only delays clarity. Understanding this is not about becoming cold or cynical. It is about recalibrating your standards. Love that costs you your dignity is not love worth preserving. In the final part, we will bring everything together with a clear conclusion and an important disclaimer, so that awareness leads to clarity rather than bitterness, and understanding becomes a tool for self-respect, not resentment. This content is not a declaration that all women cheat, nor is it an invitation to hate or distrust women as a whole. That mindset leads only to bitterness and isolation. The purpose here is far more precise. It is to help men recognize specific behavioral patterns that appear in some women who cheat repeatedly, so they can protect themselves without losing their humanity or self-respect. Not every inconsistency means infidelity. Not every moment of distance is deception. People are complex, and every relationship deserves to be evaluated in its full context. This is why impulsive decisions based on fear or partial information are dangerous. Awareness should create clarity, not paranoia. Observation should replace obsession. Calm assessment should replace emotional reactivity. At the same time, clarity requires honesty. If a pattern is consistent, if manipulation, disrespect, and boundary violations repeat despite communication, then denial becomes self-betrayal. A man's responsibility is not to fix, rescue, or absorb chaos indefinitely. His responsibility is to choose environments where respect can exist. Love cannot survive where dignity is slowly eroded. These patterns are not meant to justify anger or revenge. They are meant to restore agency. When a man understands behavior, he stops internalizing blame that does not belong to him. He stops negotiating with confusion. He stops waiting for someone else to become safe. Instead, he regains the ability to decide from a place of strength rather than fear. The ultimate goal is not bitterness, superiority, or emotional withdrawal. It is clarity. Clarity allows a man to walk away without hatred, to stay without self-deception, and to build relationships rooted in mutual respect rather than constant vigilance. When you know what you are dealing with, you no longer need to harden your heart, you simply need to honor your standards. Understanding patterns does not make you cold, it makes you precise, and precision is what allows trust to be given wisely rather than blindly.